High on a mountaintop with deer mice.
With your scientists, Catie Ivy
and Nastashya Wall.
Here at McMaster University, we are interested in studying high altitude.
Because high altitude is an extreme environment.
We want to talk to you about why high altitude is an extreme environment.
In Hamilton, we are at sea level, which means we are experiencing 21% oxygen, but at high altitude, we would experience 12% oxygen.
That's half the amount of oxygen we're breathing in right now, which sounds just awful.
And if we were to go up to high altitude, we would see that we would breathe differently to bring more oxygen into our body. For example, we would see that we would breathe faster with shallow breaths, whereas a high altitude native would take deeper breaths at a lower frequency, which is a more effective way to bring oxygen into the body.
Low oxygen is not the only stressor at high altitude. It is also really cold year-round. Even in the summer, at low altitude, it's approximately 26 degrees at night, but at high altitude, it is 0 degrees or even below 0.
I don't know, Nastashya. That doesn't sound so cold.
An animal needs to keep themselves warm in cold temperatures, and so they produce heat. There are two ways to make heat, shivering and non-shivering. Heat produced in the muscles is called shivering, but many mammals also have another way of producing heat called non-shivering. Non-shivering heat production takes place in a special type of brown-colored fat.
It's so cold! Why is it so cold? For our research here at Mac, we work on deer mice from 2 different altitudes, one low and one high.
Deer mice are great study subjects because they are found at all altitudes, from sea level up to 4,300 meters, right on a mountaintop.
We compare low altitude and high altitude mice to see how the high altitude mice have adapted to their low oxygen and cold environment. Because the low altitude mice have not evolved with these stressors, their physiology will be different from the high altitude mice. For example, I would expect the mice at high altitude to take deeper, longer breaths compared to the mice at low altitude.
I would expect the amount that the high altitude mice depend on non-shivering heat production to be greater than the low altitude mice. To see how much heat a mouse can make, I put them in a chamber and decrease the temperature in the surrounding environment. I quantify how much heat is made by measuring how much oxygen the mouse consumes, since in order to make heat, an animal has to use oxygen. Now I know the total heat produced. Then I give the mouse the neurotransmitter norepinephrine, which controls brown fat, the specialized heat-producing tissue. This causes the mouse to produce as much heat as possible using non-shivering. Now I know how much heat is produced by non-shivering. If I subtract the heat produced by non-shivering from the total heat produced, I know how much heat comes from shivering. The importance of shivering and non-shivering to overall heat production is not known. Since mammals must keep warm in order to survive, heat production is a vital process to understand.
For me to test whether highland mice take deeper, longer breaths than lowland mice, I put mice into a small chamber and measure their breathing pattern. Here, you can see the mouse breathing being traced in the top line in red, and the mouse in the chamber on the left side of the screen. From this breathing trace, I can then quantify how quickly the mouse is breathing and how deep each breath is. Animals living at high altitude are forced to adapt in order to survive in very hostile conditions. When we study how animals can thrive in extreme environments, we find out what our bodies are physiologically capable of.
And the stressors of low oxygen and cold are found around the world, not just on mountains. Low oxygen occurs for burrowing animals, and many species live in seasonal environments where it can get very chilly in the winter.
Together, we are looking at a small piece of a really big question. How do animals physiologically adapt to different climates and climate extremes?
This is an important question to answer, since we live in an environment that is going to be changing over the next few decades due to climate change.
Thank you!